Hey, it's Adam, your internet chess coach. This game is part of a segment of a full analysis video. If you want the full video, click the link below. Otherwise, stay tuned and watch this just single game. Hikaru is white, his opponent is black. Castles. Okay, knight c3 defending the pawn first. Knight e2. Maybe c3. Okay, knight g3. I'm trying to guess the moves. You're welcome to guess along. And I encourage it to guess the moves here. If you have any questions why some moves weren't played or why some moves were played specifically, just comment below and I'll try to answer them. Okay, so structure is very defined. White is playing on the king side with f4, maybe c3 at the right moment. Hikaru traded off his light squared bishop, all his pawns are on light squares. He has a very strong pin against that knight now. Maybe he wants to go h3, knight h2, knight g4. That's something I might play. Queen d2. Defending the knight. Now pawn to f4 looks like a good idea at some point. Maybe you don't want to open the dark sword bishop. Not 100% sure there. Okay, he goes for it. He opens up, goes for the main pawn break. Does he take or double the rooks? I think, okay, rook f3, knight f3. Interesting move. What's the point? Bishop takes f5. Pawn takes. Maybe g6 for black. Maybe, yeah, maybe just pawn g6. And then, okay, he takes. So black is up. Pawn, I think. Yeah. And this pawn on f6 doesn't look so appealing. The bishop on g6, quite a good defender. He goes a4, stopping b5. And if b5, you take, and go b3, fixing the structure. Very interesting, playing on both sides of the board. Okay, so b3 anyways makes sense. Knight h5. Knight h4, sorry. g3. Wow, what an interesting move. Stopping what? We'll take a look afterwards. The queen on d2 hits the a5 pawn, not anymore. And he's rerouting his knight to better squares. f4. What does he want to do from f4, though? Knight f4. Then rook e1. Trading. Black is a pawn. Just trade everything. Okay, he just keeps the tension. Still, I like rook e1. Bishop g f5, I don't understand so much. Yeah, now the f6 pawn hangs. Okay, could take on f6. Take the rook. Get material back. He wants checkmate. Oh no. Black is getting mated and just resigns the game. What a nice, out of nowhere, queen to h6. All right, let's head to our analysis. So game number 2, Hikaru with the white pieces plays e4, e5, bishop c4. Knight f6, pawn d3, c6, and knight to f3. Pawn d5, and bishop to b3. I don't think you want to take this as white, because your goal is to keep this strong structure and not give black his very flexible structure in the center. After bishop e3, knight c6, black is doing quite well. Completely equalized. So bishop to b3. Now the question is what happens if you take? Then you get hit with Knight g5. Engine says knight g5, and if bishop g4, bishop f7. This is good for white. So you can't take just yet. Bishop b4, bishop d2. This position was played in 2018 between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. Bishop d6, knight c3, d4. d4 main move. They're following some theory here, and this is the first point of deviation with pawn c5. Okay, pawn c5, knight g3, knight c6, bishop e6, and bishop a4. This is an interesting move. Is this a move that you would consider when you're playing the game? To willfully move your bishop once, twice, and 3 times early on in the game in order to trade off a knight. Typically, players try to keep the bishops versus knight, but now what Hikaru is noticing, I think, is that the structure is very defined in the center. His pawns are on light squares, so his goal strategically is to get a position where he has a better minor piece than black. In this case, he's hoping that a knight is able to be slightly better than the bishop after this trade. Maybe you could also damage the pawn structure, which is going to be very useful for white. So bishop comes back, black recognizes this. Hikaru just takes anyways, not wasting any time. Stalls the knight on f5, and black castles. Engine says completely equal, but we notice a big difference between the bishop and the knight. Queen d2, bishop d7, and knight h5. Knight h4, sorry, and pawn to f4. I was wondering whether pawn to f4 should be played, but what I realize now is how important it is for white to activate on the f file. And even though it also opens up black's dark squared bishop, it is consistent with the main pawn break. The position is still remaining closed, and the knights are quite strong on the king side. I thought another plan here was to go h3. Queen d2, best move by the engine. h3 with the idea of knight h2 and knight g4. But after h6, you're getting kicked away. Bishop h4, king h7. And if we go knight h2, what happens? Then we get kind of stalled on the king side with g5. And he can't go g5 right away with this knight covering. For example, like let's just say rook e1, g5 would be a massive mistake, I thought. Apparently not that big of a mistake here. I thought you could sack, which you can apparently, but the knight's going to be eliminated. And engine says it is just an equal position. Very difficult to assess. After queen f3, I don't know if you take because now the rook's coming to e4, rook to h8, rook e4, and black is slightly better here, but I think really difficult to play for both sides. White may be much easier to play, actually. Okay, let's go back. Queen d2. Bishop d7, knight h4, a5, f4, rook a6, takes, and knight to f3. Knight to f3 I thought was a very interesting move because it blocked the rook on the f file. It also allows black at some point to take, and you can't take back with the knight or the rook, which is ideal. And the question strategically is, why did he play this move? I was anticipating black taking on f5, and after the knight takes on e5, bishop retreats to c8. I thought maybe g6 as well, but after bishop c8, you could have done this, and black has some pressure here, but the rook defends quite nicely. You should probably get out of the pin, maybe play. Yeah, not so clear what this bishop is doing. Maybe play queen e7 to kick the knight away. And the bishop still covers g4, so there's no knight g4 idea. Black is perfectly fine here, but white does have some pressure. So he had the opportunity to go for this. He went in the game Bishop moves back, and this gave white a significant advantage with a tactic which Hikaru missed, which was knight takes g7. So try to calculate what the best follow-up is. After knight g7, if black takes, what's the point? Can you find the idea? It is pawn to e5, I believe, after. Let's see. Knight takes, king takes, pawn to e5. Bishop h6 also good, but pawn to e5. Just taking advantage of the pin. King is in a very rough spot here. Best move is bishop f5, blocking the f-file temporarily. And white just maintained control over the position. Gonna win the piece back with a nice advantage. Okay, Hikaru missed this, but he goes e5, which allows bishop takes. How much time did he take with this e5 move? 4 seconds. Bishop takes, and black has an advantage here. I thought g6 should be played here. Let's see what the computer thinks of g6. It absolutely hates it because of this idea. Bishop h4, queen to h6, and that is really, really favorable for white. Okay, I thought that if bishop h6, then black was fine. You just move the rook, you bring the bishop back. And you can even keep the bishop out. If the queen ever comes in, then you bring the bishop back. And it's true that this is the case, but tactically, there's this idea of bishop h4, queen to h6. Okay, he takes bishop f4, bishop g6. 6. Black is slightly better here. Takes, and a4. I found a4 to be an incredible move. I'm going to put a good move here. And the idea is after b5, takes, b3, white can stack on the a file or just keep pressure on the a5 pawn for a long time. And this move a4 fixes the black pawn structure in a way where he can never break on the queen side without creating more weaknesses. If you don't go a4, I'm not sure if it's that big of a deal, but let's just say he goes rook f2, then black will play a4 himself. Maybe he can put pressure on b2, and if you ever go b3, you can take and open up the a file. You can also, after b3, develop the rook to a8 and then take at a favorable moment. Okay, so a4, queen c7, and g3. What an interesting idea. Engine doesn't like it, but Hikaru's idea with g3 is to re-route the knight, covering the e1 square, or head to f4. What can we learn from this move, g3? Even though the engine says it's not correct, he's seeing that this trade is simply unfavorable, so that's not very useful. He sees that maybe knight f5 isn't so useful either. The knight's improved, but after like rook to e5, rook to e6, maybe the knight doesn't have a really good potential. If you ever go queen h6, then we can take. So he finds a way to reroute the knight. He also controls f4 as well. But I think the main idea he's looking for is he's trying to find some play rerouting the knight. Rook to e8, rook to f2, covering the infiltration, b6. So black played b6 here, allowing his queen to take an active role, but he had to move pawn c4 here. Again, this is a pawn break, and in the previous game, he was unable to find a critical pawn break to activate his pieces and get a potential weakness for his opponent. And if you take, the bishop opens up, queen takes. If queen takes a5, then bishop takes c2, and black is doing very well here with this passed d-pawn. Okay, he misses the chance to play pawn c4 here and plays b6. He could still go c4. Engine recommends rook f1. Now it says b3, just stopping any access for black to infiltrate and get counterplay. Knight g2, queen e7, knight f4. And I thought, okay, rook e5 makes sense, but I thought just trade. And at least you're completely equal and you can't lose this game as black. And you're even slightly better here. If king g2, rook can come and attack the pawns from behind. And I don't see any way white can win this game. So I was surprised black, being the lower rated player, didn't go for this. He's 29.75, which is an enormous rating, but he can gain like 2 points, maybe 3 points for getting, maybe more even, for just getting a draw. So rook e5, rook f1, and now he goes completely wrong, moving his bishop to f5, lining up white's rooks on the f-file, losing control over the h5 square, and this is a blunder. So what was he thinking with this move? What do you think Black's idea was? He wanted to get activity with bishop f5, bishop h3, but at the cost of giving Hikaru just an enormous attack now. It's completely game over. 2 moves, game over. Okay, so Black had a better position the entire game. He had the chance to make a pawn break, failed to see it. Let's go to our analysis. Game number 2, we have, let's put this in black. e4, e5, and Hikaru went for bishop c4. And Hikaru was white. And same opponent was black. Okay, let's put this in. Okay, that's fine actually. Main reason for win. White found a tactical blow with knight h5 and knight f6 and queen h6, just completely winning the game. And main reason for loss is black was unable to get activity with c4, but more importantly, maybe he was too ambitious. He blundered, more importantly, blundered with bishop f5, allowing counterplay, allowing significant counterplay. So he didn't see the danger of knight h5. Okay, notes. Black was completely fine the entire game. White missed a tactic with knight takes g7, followed by e5. Besides that, black could have played for a draw and traded off into a slightly better endgame, up a pawn, but went for more and it backfired. All right, let's take a look at the next game.